This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Kyle Lee Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And I'm not sure if you people have noticed, but NBA is on full tilt, man. It's wild. Just flat out just scrap any level of preview predictions and, all these little things that we try and utilize in order to predetermine the fate of some of the teams that are participating right now in this rat race that we call the NBA regular season. Because quite frankly, all of those teams that we consider the bottom of the cellar are putting middle fingers up to everybody else and letting them know we're ready to ride for 2022. So to discuss this chaotic scene that's taking place right now in the game of basketball, let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, ripping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And for our people who are peeping this out, man, Mr. Shaw, clearly you can tell who is up north and who is riding down south.
Well, I was just up there with you. Don't act like that. We were just in the throes of the cold of the New York and New Jersey streets. But
which is why your happy ass is right back down in Florida. So don't even.
This is where I live. This is where I live. I come and get a little taste, and I run right back out because the wife is not with that cold shit. But nevertheless, man, it is not cold in the NBA, and it is always a hot topics of conversation here within this league, man. And excited to have this conversation. You know, we're going to do a little mulligans here on this week's episode, so we'll see how this one goes.
Yeah, man, this is one of those opportunities where we kind of do. This is not our our midterms or our quarter check-ins, but we do need to heat check our predictions that we made during the beginning of the season, because quite frankly, with the way that the first initial 15 game sample size of what we're seeing in the NBA, a lot of the teams that we had lined up on where they'll be placing themselves in their respective conferences, man, they just ain't panning out right now, brother.
Yeah, what makes it fun is I think we have a good enough sample size. That first week, you're kind of like, all right, anything can happen. But after roughly a month, we're about a month in here, you start to feel like, all right, this is probably the shape of most of these teams. And certain teams may definitely fall off the face of the earth. I think we can expect that. But I think we have a good enough feel for the most part, especially when it comes to some of the teams that we thought were definitely going to be in the cellar, tanking their lives away. If nothing else, one thing we said to begin this season is 100% true, is that the NBA is a gauntlet. And even the quote-unquote tanking teams are extremely competitive. Some of them are even hovering around 500. And that's really great to see. It really has, I think, impacted the competitive balance of the league, but the proverbial cream is still rising to the top in some cases as well too. So that's what makes it, again, it's fun to talk about. You can't really predict anything. You never know how things are going to play out. And, we've been wrong about some things. We've been right about some things as well too, but we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, man. So our episode this week, man, we'll do a little preseason predict and whether we want to continue to talk that ish or abandon ship. Shout outs to our man Buster Bus. Man, the OG of that, man. That was one of my favorite songs. I know a lot of people were stuck on Everything Remains Raw or Woo Ha. Like that was, the introduction, so to speak, the coming out party for Buster as a solo artist, and all the crazy cameos. But there was just something about that beats from Abandoned Ship, man. And that's probably one of the few opportunities that his cousin actually came off nicely on the damn track. Like they just, there was just a good flow to the both of them when they dropped that Abandoned Ship. And like every single time that we have an opportunity to do this segment, man, it gives me the warm feels, what I'm saying, about, how I want cats just to be abandoned ship. So
you need those warm feels out there where you're at, right? So yeah,
just a little bit. Just a little bit. Let me adjust my beanie a little bit. All right. Anyway, obviously, this episode of The Baseline is brought to you by 19 Media Group, man. So as you know, the 19 Media Group be running these content streets. So if you want to check our show out and the plethora of great talented shows that are out there, we encourage you guys to go to www.19 14mediagroup.com. As always, be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. And as always, you know where to find us. So we're on every major platform you can think of. So just go look us up and add us on. And then if not, if you really want to go and check us out and, you know, where we come from, what we've been doing, you know, these umpteen years already, go to www.thebaselinenba.com so you can catch this episode and all of our previous episodes as well, too. You know, my man Shaw likes to, you know what I'm saying, get you guys reminiscing on that good stuff, man. So we got some good episodes for you to kind of vibe back on and everything. All right, so coming up, Shaw and I, we're going to get down with the real, man. We're going to dig into some of our preseason predicts and whether or not we're going to continue to talk that ish with them, or we're going to have to abandon that ship with them, man. So you don't want to miss out this here on The Baseline. Time to break it down to the bone gristle. Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for the breakdown, it's time for us to kind of go back to our preseason predicts right now. With just, you know, really a quarter of the first quarter of games have taken place. So the halfway point of the games that have taken place already in this NBA season. You know, we kind of thinking to ourselves, man, do we want to still ride out with some of these teams and where we believe they're going to wind up being by the time that this regular season ends? Or do we already start talking about abandoning ship, man? And we got a few teams. I'm already ready to walk them suckers right off the plank, Shaw. I can already sense it. It's real out there in these NBA streets. And, you know, the one thing that I've noticed, man, and I think it's kind of strange the way we reflect on how the Golden State Warriors last season, they came out hot. They came out, I think, what was it? They won their first 15 of 18 games or something like that in the first 18 games that they played. And I think a lot of people were a little thrown back. They didn't expect the Warriors last season to be this damn good, right? I'm really curious from your perspective, Shaw. Did you anticipate this extreme topsy-turvy, the way that, you know, what we had thought was bottom tier teams now are suddenly hanging around at the top end of the food chain or somewhere in the middle section, and where the struggles have really begun for a lot of these teams that last season, you know, were in the runnings to try and compete for an NBA title?
It's been a strange season, you know, and I think if you're starting with the defending champions, you know, you wouldn't have thought that they would be under 500, 6-8 here as we record, with a defense that has more or less failed them. And I think that's been their biggest indictment so far this season, is that, they just haven't played good defense. 24th right now in defense, 18th in net rating, and they're still good offensively. And Curry has been, superhuman again. He's having one of the best starts of his NBA life so far this year, historically. But they're just not, it's not translating into wins. I think they just, as we record, they've been awful on the road. And those are things I just wouldn't have seen. And while they're starting to get it together a little bit here now, again, only 2 games under 500, but this has been definitely a surprise. And I think for me, the biggest indictment on that is I don't think the rest of the West has taken advantage of that. You're kind of giving time for Golden State to lick their proverbial wounds and get their proverbial house in order here. And no one in the West is really running away with things. And I think that, to me, is probably, the biggest indictment on anything. Portland, obviously, playing really great basketball. But outside of that, I think everybody is still very, very close together. To me, that's been a really big surprise for Golden State and their lack of defense.
Well, I think that one thing that really stands out to me, Shaw, when I think about the Golden State Warriors, and I agree with you, but listen, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't know how many times I think I've said this, man. The Warriors' road to a championship will never be about whether or not they have enough offense. It's going to be whether or not they stay consistent defensively. But I think you can make the argument that for any of the teams that are in the Western Conference right now, that from a defensive perspective, they are lacking, right? I don't know whether or not they're going to find an identity. And part of me is very concerned about, while there's excitement in the air, watching teams run up the scoreboard, I have a reason to pause a little bit, because I just feel like this is a recipe for disaster when you consider, do you have enough horses to go out there and continually run up the score with no one who is capable of stopping a team, right? So, and then what I basically mean by that is, typically when you see a team like the Golden State Warriors, they typically lead the way. They kind of show you the blueprint of how to improve yourself incrementally defensively. Like, I'll be honest with you, Shaw, and this is not just about any one player, any system, or anything like that. Nobody on the Warriors right now seems to play with a level of inspired defense, like with this prioritization. I think that they're taking for granted their ability, that they know that they can always step up and be better defensively. But I think that they're finding a hard enough time to find that gear to turn it on. So then what do? They go relying back to the fact that they can shoot the basketball, and that they've got a playmaker, an all-world talent like Steph Curry, who can ultimately bail them out, from time to time. And I'm not saying that just to only be talking about the Warriors. I think there are going to be a couple of teams that we're going to highlight as well too, that I think are falling right into that same proverbial trap. The only difference is, and I think it brings to that question, do you want to continue talking that ish about the Warriors, or do you want to abandon ship? For me, I'm going to continue to talk that ish, because I'm going to have to believe that they will improve their defense at some point. But I don't think the question is going to be whether or not they improve the defense. I think is, are they going to be good enough defensively to go back and get that and hoist that trophy up once again for this team? And I have my doubts, because I think dynamically there are better teams that have better athletes that'll go out there and can give you better play on both sides of the basketball, that can really challenge the Warriors, because I don't know where they're going to find that gear to pick that up with the way that the things trended so far in the beginning part of this season.
With the Warriors, you just kind of never really count them out, unless they're injured. So until that comes into the equation for me, I'm still going to talk that ish on them. Won't be abandoning any ships on Golden State. I've just seen too much and learned too much. But I agree, they are vulnerable.
I think it's going to be a personnel change, Shaw. I was listening to Brothers from Another, and they got our girl all Nat. And listen, when Nat has that worried look on her face when she's talking about the Warriors, my alarm bells go off. And her emphasis was not so much the fact that this team is obviously not on point. It's that the roster doesn't seem to be on point. And there are certain players right now that are just not finding it, or are just, are not meshing well with the, with the parts that are already there. And I think she believes that there's going to have to be a change, with that roster, in order to put the necessary assets together for them to, to kind of do this re-up on a run. So I'm likely to believe, not just because Nat's saying that, just because I'm watching this team and the mannerisms and the way they're going about it, I'm concerned. It's not that they're not going to be a playoff team, Shaw. I just don't know if they're going to be championship material, even if they find that quote unquote proverbial gear defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I was getting to. I think it's just a matter of they're mortal now, and teams in the West are catching up. I think Kerr made a statement today or recently saying that, hey, we knew that at some point this run was going to come and basically run its course. We don't know if that's right now, but they see the light at the end of the tunnel here. And it's just championship pride and grit that's probably going to get them through the, the drubs, if you will, of this regular season. But will they be able to turn it on, when the lights are the brightest in the NBA playoffs? So that's why I say, it kind of remains to be seen. But for now, here, as we're recording here in mid-November, right before Thanksgiving, let's continue to talk that ish on Golden State and see where things land.
All right. So now I'm really, really curious about let's quickly get through the Brooklyn Nets, Shaw. Let's get through them, Shaw. All right. We said the talent that they've got, there's no reason that they're probably not going to be in the conversation to make the playoffs. Yes, right now, due to the new, the changing of the head coach, obviously the whole situation with Kyrie is in the weights. But damn if I be, boy, if you told me that the X factor was going to be what you get out of Ben Simmons and what you're already seeing from Ben Simmons right now, my man, I gotta really ask you this question. Are you going to talk? We're going to continue to talk this shit about Brooklyn? Or are we trying to abandon ship? You know what I'm saying?
Yo,
Last exit Brooklyn, bro. I mean, what are we talking about right now with the Brooklyn Nets?
I'm sure there's many great 20th century philosophers who said that get me the F out of here. I'm Eric Bledsoe in this piece right now. I don't want to be here.
Well, it's quite
there's
obvious that Kevin Durant doesn't want to be here either.
it's donezo, man. And like they've had a nice little stretch here and there where they strung a couple games together. Jacques Vaughn, I think, is the right choice for them at head coach. He's been through kind of the many changes and iterations of this team here, back to the Atkinson days, if you will. And I think he's the right coach for this. But there's just nothing here that allows me to think that this is going to work itself out, despite Kyrie's talent, despite KD's talent, despite even Ben Simmons working his way back. Simmons is not going to be this bad all year, I hope. But I just don't think this is a roster that likes each other. I don't think this roster likes each other very much. And I just don't think that the pieces fit in the way that I would have hoped they would have, despite the talent. And if Simmons is going to continue to come off the bench, and if that's what Jacques Vaughn feels like is necessary, who am I to judge? It clearly says that Simmons isn't ready. You still have this Kyrie stuff going on, and I don't trust Kyrie in the way to feel like something else won't come up where he won't be a distraction. I was going into it this year hopeful and had him as a tier 2 team in the Eastern Conference. I wasn't so bold to put them in a tier 1, but it's like, things could come together and they could be in the 4 or 5 seed range. I don't know. I don't see how that's possible. I know we spent a lot of time on Brooklyn on our previous episode because of the Kyrie stuff. So I'm just going to leave it there, man. I'm abandoning ship.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to continue to talk my ish about Brooklyn because the ish I was talking about Brooklyn is exactly what I'm seeing what Brooklyn be doing. So I'm going to continue to keep talking that ish. I've never bought into this team. And quite honestly, anybody who thought that they were buying into this team, well, guess what? You done got. Okay? This is, and I've said this numerous times, Shaw, that if you really want to make a statement about whether or not it's the players or the organization has to do something bold. They have to make a bold move. But the vanity and the arrogance in them, they're going to hold on to dear life for, with regards to Kevin Durant. But I really believe that, and especially since, Kevin Durant now has come out, and I think if you paid attention to some of the quotes that have now come out from Chris Haynes, who had an interview with Kevin Durant, you need to move him. Okay. I'm not talking about moving him, because the intent is you want to get assets back. You need to move him because right now, no matter what Kevin Durant does, Kevin Durant is going to do Kevin Durant. And that's not a knock to him because that's how he's kind of always been. He's made sure that even in the most tumultuous of situations, he gonna be all right. Okay. And he's never apologized for that. So you knew that coming in, right? You capitulated, you gave him everything he wanted. And now that he doesn't want to be there anymore, you have to think about how far down this rabbit hole do you want your organization to go down into? Shaw, I'm telling you this right now. I feel really bad for the Nick Claxtons of the world, the Sumners, the Royce O'Neals. A lot of these guys are really, really playing hard. They're buying into Jacques Vaughn, to your point. This is a Kenny Atkinson reboot that we see here. But it's not going to happen when you don't have true leadership and guidance on the basketball court. And that means you need to get rid of Durant, Irving, and Simmons. Send them to wherever they want to go. And you need to start thinking about what is your organization, your team going to look like with guys that really want to buy in on what you have laid before them. If you've got a legit coach, you buy into him, then you need to have players that want to buy in what the coach is asking for. And that's all that I'm going to say on this. But I will continue to talk my ish about the Brooklyn Nets because this, again, is another example of why you cannot buy your way into a championship. You need to make sure that if you're going to put your money into some of these type of players, and when I say these type of players, I mean superstar players who don't want to be the leaders, vocal leaders in the locker room. They just want to go out and ball. Then you need to make sure that you're putting the right players point guard, whoever it else, the person that you truly want to put that C on their jersey in order for them to go out there and to hold everybody accountable when the team is not playing to the level that they're capable of playing.
No, I mean, again, not going to belabor it. We've spent too much time on them already. So, hey, continue to do what you do, and I will be jumping the bandwagon off of the Brooklyn Nets for sure.
I'm riding out like all up in their ear. I'm like that heckler, like right there in the front seat, be calling them all night long. They're gonna hate me. All right, man. Let's go ahead and focus our attention to, and I find this one to be a very interesting one. Portland Trailblazers. No, I'm sorry. No, the Utah Jazz. So the Utah Jazz, very interesting team, Shaw, because they came out hot out the gates. I believe that they were like 10-3. Taking a step back. I think they've lost they lost 3 out of the last 5 now. So where are you with them, right? Do you want to continue to talk that ish about how bad they are? Do you want to abandon ship on that idea? Or do you want to talk that ish about how good this team really can be, and over the next couple of weeks, months, whatever the case may be? Or are you abandoning ship on the idea that what we just seen from them in this first 16-game sample, that's fugazi, right? And they're going to come down to earth hard, like crash real hard. Where are we with the Utah Jazz, excuse me?
Yeah, so for Utah, for me, they are definitely an abandoned ship from the original prognostication of being this superly tankful team. But I remember saying it, and we just had Eric Wallman on the last episode and we talked about it. And I said, like, they just have too many known guys, competent guys, if you will, but you didn't know if some of those parts would fit together. And the short version in the short time that they've been playing is that it's worked, but now they're hitting the little skid. And I think it's just like, they're not ready to bottom out in the way that I think we originally thought they were. So that's where I say I would abandon ship from the original prognosis. But this is not a team that is, top of the Western Conference. And I do think Danny Ainge is still going to tinker. I do think, we will see some of those parts still sold off to some degree to the highest bidder. And maybe they will be able to level out a little bit more in the way that Ainge was originally coming into the season, thinking that they would, despite the great coaching of Will Hardy to begin the year, despite the finishing aspect of Lauri Markkanen to begin the year. Those are things that have definitely changed the prospect for the Utah Jazz. So I'm abandoning ship, but I still think they are going to be one of the, I'm not going to say bottom feeders, but they're going to be competitive all year long, but they will not be in the Wembanyama races here because I think they're still too good and they've gotten off to a great start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a reason to really abandon ship on them because I was talking my ish about the fact that I was like, do not sleep on this team. This team is going to be a competitive basketball team. And it surprises me that I think a lot of people really didn't give that much credit that, Danny Ainge is going to put together players that are going to go out there and going to compete. The crazy part about it is he's gotten legitimate players where if other packages, you would have probably slept on the idea that they were be worth something if they're on his roster. I think everybody just gets too caught up in the fact that it has to be some upper echelon name type player that Danny Ainge should be getting. If the guy is going to fit with whatever, system that he has his coach, implementing, then he's going to get what he can from him. Now, maybe it's just a good 1-year window or whatever the case may be. But the fact that these guys are taking advantage of the downward trend, so to speak, of what the top tier teams in the NBA from last year are doing and going out there and beating them, I think speaks well. And the fact that even some of these games that they're losing, like even on this losing streak, they're still competing very hard. There's a flow to this team, man. And I appreciate that. And I still believe that this team is going to be, very much viable moving forward into the NBA season. With that being said, what about, their rival, the Oklahoma City Thunder? Shaw, we were chilling, while you made your way up here to NY. We watched them drop, what was it? 153 or something like that, right? Wasn't it like 140? What is it? They dropped triple digits on the New York Knicks at the Madison Square Garden. SGA had his Steph moment, but it's like the quietest Steph moment that you'll ever hear, because what resonated more loudly was the fact that everybody was on the New York Knicks and how bad they were. But I really don't think people were paying attention to the other couple nights that the Oklahoma City Thunder were dropping on teams, right? Look at what they did to our Boston Celtics. Okay. This is not coming out of nowhere, bro. This Oklahoma City Thunder team knows how to put some points up. So are we talking ish about that OKC Thunder, or are we abandoning ship on them?
Yeah, I mean, again, if I'm keeping with the original theme, I'm going to continue to talk my ish though. I don't think they're as good as
Well,
they.
you
As
talk
they
some this about SGA because you love you some SGA.
I do, and I think he's having what could potentially be an All NBA season for him, especially if they were to hover anywhere near around 500. I just don't think it's sustainable. And knowing Presti, like how we know Presti, there's no chance that he allows this to continue on. So right now, they're sneakily adequate in defense, 12th in defensive rating. Yeah, I mean their offense is 20th right now. But when they get hot, especially shooting the three ball, and Giddey was injured to start the year, now he's starting to get his legs under him. As you alluded to, SGA has been really good. I think Dort still has a ways to go. Listen, they have competent guys as well, and they're pretty well coached. Excuse me. So for me, OKC is a team that is playing a little bit above their heads right now, and I would have to go back and maybe look at who they played and who was out when they played the XY team, but I just don't believe that this is going to be a team that is going to continue to stay in this space. Not because I don't believe in their talent, but I more believe in the tanking prowess of Sam Presti, and they'll start holding guys out and doing all that stuff, especially if it gives them a chance, to get another pick, especially to pair that person alongside Chet Holmgren when he returns next year. OKC may be on the verge of building, I don't want to say super team, but a very, very competitive roster. And I feel like if they can get one more guy, Presti's going to do all he can to potentially do that.
Look, man, if this is what tanking looks like, fine, tank. Tank. I mean, these guys look, man, they look athletic. They look like they're scorers, they're bucket getters. You know what I mean? Obviously their defense has a lot left to be desired, but who knows, man? They may figure that part of it out too and stuff like that, right? Like, but these guys are bucket getters, man. They're fun to watch. They will put it on any of the other teams. So it's really interesting because they represent a direct contrast to what we're saying a lot of teams are going to need to be if they're going to expect to play championship level basketball. And quite honestly, we already know that that's not the case with the OKC Thunder. So to me, it's a very interesting dynamic watching those guys go out there and play. I think I was mentioning this before to our boy Mo when we were watching OKC play the New York Knicks. I'm like, this kid Luton Dort, this guy can probably score 20 points per game. To me, he reminds me of a young Ron Artest like kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like he's physical, but he has the potential where he can go and he can score the basketball. Now he doesn't shoot the rock all that particularly well, but hey, remember that was how Ron Artest was when he first came into the league. He was not a great shooter. He was known for his defensive prowess. Then he suddenly became like this bona fide scorer when he played for the Pacers. And then he was a X factor for the Los Angeles Lakers and stuff, man. Like, so I just liked some of these parts, man. And you get Holmgren back. Obviously they'll probably be in the running for Wembanyama, but to me, just who they are right now, I like what they represent, man. So kudos to the OKC Thunder, man. They're gonna allow me to talk some ish, no matter how bad they might wind up looking with their regular season record, all things considered. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our topic of the breakdown, as we're digging in on our preseason predicts, man. We continue to talking that ish about these teams, or we abandoning ship. A couple more teams, Shaw, we talk about in the Western Conference, and then we'll switch gears and focus our attention quickly to the East. But like for the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Phoenix Suns. I lumped all three of these teams in there because I think we spoke at length in our previews about where both of these teams might wind up being, how much confidence we have in them. Where do you see all three of these teams in comparison to what you gave your previews? Are you continuing to talk your ish about them, or are you looking to abandon ship on any of them?
All right. So you said Dallas, Phoenix, and who else?
Pelicans. Oh, big sigh.
So I'm going to continue. You know what? I thought Phoenix would be good. I thought New Orleans would be good. And I thought Dallas would be average. I'm talking my ish on all three of those things. I stand by it. And they're roughly around, the same records currently as we're having this conversation. I still feel like Dallas is going to regress, but Luka's playing at an MVP level. We're finally getting MVP Luka to begin the year, not 15, 20 games in after he's worked off his weight or whatever the case would be. He's came out the gate, and just blazing like 33, 8-8 or something ridiculous right now. It's just but it's all him. And to me, that's why it's not sustainable. That was my problem with Dallas going in. They're still too top heavy for me. Dinwiddie has been turning it up here a little bit here in the last week, so I don't want to discredit that. I'm not quite sure how much I like the Christian Wood fit coming off the bench or playing just in general with this roster. He's been up and down, and he's also been in and out of the lineup to begin with. But to me, I'm going to talk my ish, like I said, in all three. Dallas will be, an average team that will probably struggle to make the playoffs. I will stand by that. I think Phoenix, Chris Paul's got to kind of work himself into some semblance of shape here. And, Bridges has got to continue to take the leap that he has, Ayton, et cetera, et cetera. But I think they'll still be in the conversation. And I think New Orleans is going to, assuming Zion can stay healthy, they're going to be right there as well, too, I think, in the middle of the pack of the West. I really like what they're about. I like their young players. CJ is not really shooting it great right now. And I think all those are things that can improve and will improve. And I believe in Willie Green as a coach as well. So, yeah, I'm stuck in my shit on all three of those teams.
I'm going to abandon ship on the Phoenix Suns. So I only say this because I think the thing that really concerns me is that this team, as talented as we've seen them be, once again have not proven to me that they have a gear. I don't know if whether or not they lost that gear when they finally had gotten to the finals and just fell short, against the Milwaukee Bucks. But I'm not seeing that gear, man. Like, even in the regular season, Shaw, like their ebb and flows now are just so much so that it's like you almost kind of feel bad for Monty Williams because I don't know what else he's going to be able to do. I think that this is going to have to come down to James Jones, doing something to help kick that next gear on him. I'm not saying you don't, rely on Booker. Obviously you have to raise your concern about Chris Paul, but to me, I just feel like we're saying that we wanted Bridges or Johnson, one of those guys to step up and really help supplement a legit three-headed monster, or even Ayton, because they chose to bring him back. But I'm saying, like, if you're saying that you want to be back in that championship conversation, you really want to make some noise, something had to be done with this roster. And they chose to keep the same roster that they've got. And I think, what I'm seeing from this team is, unless they're planning to, like, take their defense to the umpteenth degree, or just start becoming a lights out scoring basketball team, whatever those extremes are, just looking like a dominant team altogether. I think we've seen the best of the Phoenix Suns, man. They're going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but I don't think that they're going to be, I don't think they're going to be as dogged and as formidable when you look at some of the other talented teams that have a lot more upside to making that run. So, again, regular season, no matter what that says to me, it's going to probably mean nothing, because I'm not seeing anything even from the outset of this season that's really standing out head and shoulders above to me saying, yeah, you ride on Booker, that's it. That's what it's going to be. Like, you can at least reach on that part of it if it's the Golden State Warriors, right? You may even be able to reach a part of that with the Dallas Mavericks. To your point, Shaw, you're saying that it's basically coming down to whether or not Doncic can sustain what he's doing. I'm of the likelihood to say maybe not so much hardcore, but I think it's there, because Jokic had to be that kind of way, and he wound up being MVP 2 times over, right? So if Jokic can do it, and look at the body structures between those two dudes, I think Doncic has the ability to do it. It's just a question of whether or not he wants to do it, and he's trending in that direction. He's still young enough to do it. So that's where I'm at. Of those two, I'll continue to talk my issue about the Pelicans. I think they're a decent team. I don't think I'm seeing anything head and shoulders above that makes me want to say they're going to leapfrog and be the creme de la creme of the West. But outside of anything else, man, the Dallas Mavericks are going to ride the Pelicans. And I think the Phoenix Suns, to me, are going to kind of be the odd man team out. Like, when you see them, I don't know if they're as real as they are. Like my man Jabari says, they may need more people.
All right. Well, I think all those are great assessments. And for me, New Orleans obviously hinges on Zion's ability to stay healthy. He's missed more than a handful of games. Ingram is another guy who's, who's never going to play a full 82. We know that coming in, but I think they have enough depth and balance, especially like Larry Nance coming off the bench. Valanciunas is more than a serviceable center, so he can definitely pick up on nights when Ingram or Zion are out. And I think, again, Willie Green is a good coach. So to me, they have a lot of upside and a lot of potential that they can still reach, where I feel like Dallas is limited. And I understand your point about Phoenix, because that was a conversation we did have going into it. Just kind of like, all right, are they going to ho-hum this? Are they've just kind of reached their proverbial peak because their window closed? All of those, cliches, if you will, we don't know. And now the injury to Cameron Johnson is, not amazing for them as well too. Aiton's off to a slow start. Chris Paul is off to a slow start. So a lot of questions with Phoenix. But again, I just don't think the rest of the West is equipped to run away with anything. And I think a veteran team like that, especially if they can get back healthy and get into shape, I think Phoenix will have a lot to say with it when the Western Conference is all set and at least in the regular season.
Absolutely. All right. So coming up now, we're going to focus our attention on a couple of the teams that we had our predictions about from the Eastern Conference. Are they still holding true to that? Or is it time for us to throw them anchors out, man, and send them down into the abyss and abandon their ship, man? You'll find out here on the Baseline. All right, Shaw, we are back, man. Baseline NBA podcast, and we're doing our preseason predicts. Still talking ish about these teams are abandoning ship, man. And look, to me personally, Shaw, when I think about what I've seen so far in the Eastern Conference, it's about exactly where it is, man. Our top heavy teams, the Boston Celtics, Milwaukee Bucks, they're holding firm. I guess maybe you can ask, if you ask me the question about the Atlanta Hawks or maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers, would I be continuing to talk ish about them? I don't know. Like, I don't think that the Atlanta Hawks are overachieving. I think they're kind of where they're needing to be. I think I'm just waiting for them to, kind of have that proverbial lull that they typically have, where they struggle and they make things hard for themselves where it necessarily needs to be. But right now they're sitting third. And I feel like, for me, I'm not going to abandon ship just yet on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I expect them to kind of go through some struggles because they're already going through some early injuries that has kind of set them back some. But I think, for all things considered, you should be feeling pretty impressed, Shaw, at least with some of these teams that you're seeing in the Eastern Conference. It's such a close window being competitive out there in the East.
Yeah, I love it. We knew it, dog. We knew the East was going to be a gauntlet. I can't say I expected Boston to be 11-3 with 2 losses to Cleveland, as we record. So, I think that's interesting. I thought, maybe whatever, I don't know, 9-6 or something like that, or whatever the case may be. But especially without Robert Williams, and their defense has slipped. So that's been a little bit surprising to me. But I think if we're just going into the overall conversation of talk ish or abandon, for me, I'm kind of abandoning ish on abandoning ship rather on the Philadelphia 76ers. Harden, well, and remember where I had them though. So again, it's relative to the preseason prediction. So I don't think, they're not going to make the playoffs or anything, something crazy like that too. But they're not as elite as I think I and many in NBA Twitter world were led to believe. And I don't know if that's a Doc Rivers thing. I don't know if that's a Harden and Embiid combination thing, Maxey, whatever. I don't know. But with Harden out, we'll see Embiid put up MVP like numbers, but when Harden's there, we don't get that same situation. And I think Embiid needs to be at an MVP level for Philadelphia to be an elite team in the Eastern Conference, not just good, not home court advantage, but elite. And I don't know that this team is ready for that step just yet. We'll see when Harden gets back, but that would be one team that I'd be abandoning ship on from my early season prediction of them being in the conversation for the number 1 or number 2 seed. I hope I'm wrong, but right now I just don't get those vibes from them. Something's weird about their energy.
What about the Miami Heat? Are you, right now they're sitting 10th, but they do, they're a 500 team, but are you feeling still bullish about them in their ability to, get back up into the top tier of the Eastern Conference?
Here's what I'll say about it. And not trying to be dodgy, I wasn't confident in my original prognostication of them being a tier 2 team. I was just like, I'm kind of just grandfathering them in. I live in the area. Spoelstra's a great coach, but I just didn't like many didn't feel like they did enough to kind of really get there. like as compared to the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference. Yes, they still have Victor Oladipo to come back. He hasn't played a minute for them. Year 7 is now, I think, out for the foreseeable future. I don't want to say he's out for the year, but he's out for the foreseeable future. So he hasn't really been able to do anything for them as well, too. But if Oladipo comes back, it gives them a little bit of a boost. But I just feel like I probably I should have went with my original gut and putting them as a kind of a tier 3 team. I just don't think we're going to get the same magic that we got from them last year to be at the top of the conference. And again, I still had them in tier 2, but I think they're probably just a tier below that, a team that'll be like right around or a couple games above 500, but not shuffling for 50 wins or anything like that.
All right. So there's only really one team that I'm going to really abandon ship on. And it's not because of where my predictions were. It's more so on what I think may wind up taking place. So, spoiler alert, there may be a conspiracy theory coming in here. And this is in regards to the Detroit Pistons. So I'm going to abandon ship on me saying that the Detroit Pistons are going to be a lot better than I thought that they were going to be. Not that I don't think that this is a good competitive team and that they have been in it competing against so far in the early outside of the season. But when you look at the numbers that are projected, this is one of the worst teams defensively, allowing they're second to worst as far as points allowed. Dwayne Casey's mark has been on making teams better defensively. Somehow that is not resonating with these guys. And I feel like it's going to come to a head with regards to whether or not he is going to be able to stay the head coach before this season ends. If that is the case, Shaw, I'm saying this with trepidation, but I'm just saying, like, if you are the Detroit Pistons, you may have to take some level of drastic steps in order for you to really find out what kind of team you have working with. They've got a lot of young talent, but they got to start seeing these guys go out there competing and translating on things that identifies with what the organization and the team is supposed to reflect, right? If Dwayne Casey gets ousted, do not be surprised if they don't make a play for Ime Udoka.
Look at you out here calling for people's heads already, man. It's too
I'm
early.
not calling. I want Dwayne Casey to still be the coach. But what I'm saying is if he hangs his hat on coaching up young guys and getting them to improve, right now they are third worst when it comes to scoring, right? But they are second worst when it comes to playing defense, as far as allowing other teams scoring on them. And I'm just saying something is going to have to give here. I'm not calling out Dwayne Casey in the sense I want him fired. What I'm saying is I hope he can help turn this around. But if you're going to tell me if there's a future for him to still be the head coach for this kind of talent that he is working with, I'm telling you right now, the organization is probably going to make a drastic change and they will oust him unless he figures out either to get this team to improve themselves scoring the basketball or to get them to be better defensively.
I only challenge, or I wouldn't even say disagree. I'd only bring up this point. I got the perception that they thought they were closer than they actually were, especially with the acquisition of Bogdanovich. And to me, I said, like, well, hey, I liked everything they did kind of up until that move. I didn't really quite get it. Then, you kick the tires, like, all right, well, he's a veteran. They got him for Olynyk and a bag of chips. They could potentially flip him down the line if things don't work out, like they're not really working out right now. So either way, it doesn't really hurt them. But I was like, well, just, play your young guys. Then they have the Bagley injury to begin the year. And now Cade's out. And now Isaiah Stewart is out. So now they're not even getting to play their core guys together. Duran was out for a little bit as well. I just feel like maybe they were a little bit more ambitious than they probably should have been. And I don't know if that's going to be a reflection on Casey as a coach. I'm expecting, like, hey, they should be at a higher level. But maybe what you're saying is that just in terms of like their overall competitiveness, where they rank kind of in some of these metrics, you don't want to be last or near last in offense and near last in defense. Can they get those numbers to be up? And they started to play better at the end of last year. So I hope Casey gets the opportunity to turn this around. It's a little bit worse than I thought it was going to be to begin the year, for sure. I still had them as a tier 4 team, but which was the last in the conference, or in that grouping. But I still didn't see this, and it's been a little bit rough. But they have been injured, so hopefully things will turn around for them a little bit, and they can put some better product on the floor and build towards the future, because I think they do have, you alluded to, have some really, really great young talent.
All right, give me some honorable mentions, Shaw.
Some honorable mentions, I think, in the Eastern Conference. So, in terms of abandoning or talking ish, um, I'm going to look around and I'm going to say, you know what? I was wrong about the Indiana Pacers. So I have to abandon ship from my original, prediction from them. 500 basketball team. I still don't really see how this is happening. Halliburton is great. Don't get me wrong. But Benedict Mathurin, I think he's probably been the biggest difference for them. Miles Turner has been like, look what happens when you give me the ball. I just didn't believe that Turner can be a guy who could really kind of run your offense through. So I have to kind of give them a lot of respect. So I'm gonna, that'll definitely be an honorable mention team for me, the Indiana Pacers. We're at the abandoned ship from my original prediction from them for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably say the New York Knicks. Like, um, man, I don't know what it's like to be a 500 team, but they are smoke and mirrors, bro. Smoke and mirrors. They're gonna have to do more. I can tell you that right now. But I think whatever change is going to take place, whatever drastic change that's going to take place, this type of extreme, it might be at the head of Tom Thibodeau still being that head coach, bro. There. Let's just say, I know that they were going to be a better team, but their their room for error, I mean, is so razor thin because they are so extreme. They're to the extremes of what they could probably do offensively for you and what they allow themselves to show you when they play as they play defensively. So if there's a team right now that that I would abandon ship on right now, it would probably be the New York Knicks because I think something is going to happen with that team. Regardless of what they did in this offseason, that's going to give me an indication that they really want to see the best out of this team. Because right now, to see them with the way that they give it up defensively and then the way that they, like collapse in second halves of games after having 20, 25-point leads and things of that nature, which I know in the NBA, that's really nothing. But the point is that you cannot allow yourself to collapse like that and then not get talked about because of it, right? Like you will get hammered. And that's on guys that we're saying they put their mark on the fact that they have good defensive teams or they play up better defensively. And I feel like if that continues to keep happening, don't be surprised if Tom Thibodeau as well too is on the hot seat and they make a play to move on from him. Now I don't think they'll get a Udoka, but I certainly don't think that they're going to continue to have him continue to coach this team if they're going to have this kind of extreme, you know, imbalance of play that takes place. Not in that division that they're playing in, and definitely not in that conference.
Well, you mentioned Udoka's name here twice. I don't think Udoka would want to go to either one of those situations, even if there were moves. So I don't know if it's dealer's choice here, especially coming off of what he's coming off of. So I think with Brooklyn passing on him right now, maybe the rest of the league is kind of like, you know what, let's let that simmer down a little bit more. Let's get a little more distance from that overall situation. But I think it is interesting that you're highlighting the opportunity potential of both Thibodeau and Casey to be on the hot seat if things don't turn around. I think the Knicks are about where I expected them to be. So I don't have that same, level of concern from them, but we'll see where this thing lands. And Randall's been okay. Brunson, I think, has been really good for them. He's measured, he's poised. He's better than I think a lot of people even realized. Barrett is starting to turn it up here now in this part of the season as well. I think there's some more to go. Playing the young guys, getting Cam Reddish out there. So Tibbs has a little bit more rope, bro.
A little bit more rope. Well, he's doing everything to keep his job. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Awesome show, man. I'm telling you, man, like, it's kind of interesting where we find ourselves, and this is not even, we're not even through the first quarter of the NBA season just yet. But so far, so good, man. This kind of topsy-turvy stuff, man, lends itself for us to pay attention a lot more to the Sacramento Kings, the Indiana Pacers, the Washington Wizards, you know what I'm saying, of the world, because they're out there balling and they're taking advantage of their schedule and they're taking advantage of clearly teams that are very slow out the gate and they're struggling to find their way.
Sir. So I'm excited about it. And, we'll do some more team specific highlights and, and conversations, but it was a nice general conversation and giving us an opportunity to get a mulligan and maybe retract some early season predictions here. Not too much, walking things back, But I think, again, we have a good sense of who these teams are, and that's important. So, we give ourselves an opportunity to get a little wiggle room, but as Thanos said when he killed no, no comebacks this time. So if this is what we got to stay with, we got to rock with this year, and no resurrections rather. And this is going to be it. We got to stand on 10 toes down here on everything else we said here on this week's show.
Yeah, well, you know me, man, Shaw. I mean, the show can't be the show without me not talking ish. So there would have been very little abandoning ship on my part when it comes to that.
I love it.
Anyway, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us this week. For the Baseline, Kylie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do.